Ever had that moment where you realize you become invisible to the person who's supposed to love you the most? That was me. My name is Kate, and after 15 years of marriage, I thought I had it all figured out. But let me tell you, nothing prepares you for the moment when you realize your husband doesn't even see you anymore. It hit me hard on our anniversary. 15 years together, and Mark didn't even remember. No flowers, no card, not even a happy anniversary text. Just another day for him. He came home late, barely looked at me, and mumbled something about a busy day at work before heading upstairs. Meanwhile, I sat there staring at the fancy dinner I'd made, candles burning low, wondering when exactly I became invisible. That was the moment I snapped. I grabbed my coat, got in the car, and drove to the first bar I could find. Honestly, I didn't have a plan. I just needed to get out of the house, away from the suffocating silence. The bar was cozy, dimly lit, and exactly what I needed. I ordered a drink and barely had time to take a sip before a man slid onto the stool next to me. "Rough night?" he asked, his voice warm and smooth. I glanced over. He was tall, handsome, with dark hair and piercing blue eyes. The kind of guy who makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. "You could say that," I replied, trying to sound casual. "I'm Ethan," he said, holding out his hand. "Kate." We started talking, and before I knew it, hours had passed. He was charming and attentive in a way that felt foreign to me. Mark hadn't looked at me like that in years. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Then the conversation shifted. The air between us grew heavier, more charged. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You deserve to be noticed," he said softly. "To be appreciated." Something inside me broke free. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was the loneliness I'd been carrying for too long. I leaned in, and before I could second-guess myself, our lips met. It wasn't just a kiss. It was passion, longing, and freedom all rolled into one. We left the bar together, and that night, I felt more alive than I had in years. The next morning, I woke up in a hotel room. Ethan was gone, but he'd left a note on the pillow. "Thank you for a night I won't forget. E." I smiled to myself, feeling both guilty and exhilarated. But that feeling didn't last long. Reality hit me hard when I got home. Mark was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping his coffee as if nothing had changed. "Morning," he said without looking up from his newspaper. I wanted to scream, to throw the coffee mug at the wall, to tell him everything. But I didn't. I played the part of the perfect wife, just like I always did. Later that day, Mark mentioned he had a new business partner joining his firm. "Ethan Parker," he said. "We're meeting him today. I think you'll like him. Smart guy, good sense of humor." My blood ran cold. Ethan? My Ethan. Was it a coincidence? Did he know who I was? My mind raced with questions. That evening, Mark invited Ethan over for dinner. When the doorbell rang, my heart pounded in my chest. I opened the door, and there he was, standing there with that same charming smile. "Kate," he said, his eyes locking onto mine. "It's nice to see you again." Mark walked over, completely clueless. "You two know each other." Ethan smiled, but there was something darker behind it. We met briefly. Dinner was tense. I could barely eat, my mind spinning. After dessert, Ethan asked if he could speak to me privately. Mark, oblivious as ever, nodded and left us alone in the living room. "What are you doing here?" I hissed, trying to keep my voice steady. Ethan stepped closer, his expression darkening. "I knew exactly who you were that night, Kate." My stomach dropped. "What?" "I've known Mark for years. He screwed me over in a business deal, cost me everything. So, I figured, why not take something from him? Something he values." I stared at him, stunned. "You use me?" His expression softened, just a bit. It started that way. But then I got to know you. And I realized you're not just Mark's wife. You're incredible. Tears stung my eyes. I can't believe this. I'm sorry, he said, and for a moment, I thought he meant it. But you deserve better than him. You deserve to be loved. For days, I couldn't shake what had happened. I avoided Ethan and tried to act normal around Mark. But things weren't normal. They couldn't be. One night, Ethan showed up at my door again. I can't stop thinking about you, he said, stepping closer. I know this started wrong, but it doesn't have to end that way. I wanted to push him away, to tell him to leave. But instead, I stepped aside, letting him in. The truth is, part of me hated him for what he did. But another part couldn't deny the way he made me feel. We continued our affair in secret, meeting in hidden places, stealing moments whenever we could. It was messy and complicated, but it felt real in a way my marriage never did. Then, one night, everything came crashing down. Mark found out. I came home to find him sitting in the dark, holding a photo of me and Ethan. How long? He asked, his voice hollow. I didn't lie. A few months. He laughed bitterly. I guess I had it coming. There was no screaming, no dramatic confrontation. Just silence. And in that silence, I realized our marriage had been over long before Ethan came into my life. In the end, Mark and I divorced. He kept the house, and I started over. As for Ethan, we tried to make it work, but the truth is, our relationship was built on lies and revenge. It couldn't last. Looking back, I don't regret what happened. It taught me something important. Sometimes, you have to lose yourself to find out who you really are. If this story made you feel something, if you've ever felt invisible in your own life, hit that like button and subscribe. There's more to life than what we show the world. And trust me, the twists, they're always around the corner.